Presidential Election Petition Tribunal has validated President Muhammadu Buhari's victory at the polls in an 8-hour landmark judgment on Wednesday. President Buhari described the judgment of the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal as victory for Nigerians, stating that Nigerians gave them the mandate. The opposition PDP says that it will study the documents and head to the Supreme Court. Will the PDP win the highest court of the land, though? Data feeds are coming through in one place simultaneously on all our social media platforms, channelstv.com and on youtube.com/channelsweb. You can follow us right now on m.channelstv.com as well as Facebook as well. We've got all our platforms of social media covered. Tweet at Gimba Umar CTV and use the hashtag State of the Nation. Let's get your contributions in. In the meantime, the People's Democratic Party has condemned and totally rejected the decision of the federal government to increase the value-added tax, VAT, from 5%, describing it as excruciating, as well as a burden under the prevailing agonizing economic situation. What does this mean? Is the anti-people extremely exploitative, inconsiderate, and absolutely insensitive, according to the PDP? Are the gains of this step in the right direction? We'll be focusing on that as well on the show. In the meantime, President Buhari will depart Abuja on Saturday to attend a one-day ECOWAS Heads of Government and Extraordinary Summit on counter-terrorism in Ouagadougou, that's in Burkina Faso. Given the growing threat of intentions of terrorism in the region, can member states tackle the menace that has been long drawn, hampering development? Will the challenge of sinking in the Lake Chad Basin be a problem? Can they contain it, though? It's prime time here in Lagos, and this is State of the Nation. Welcome everyone in Nigeria and the rest of the world. I am Gimba Umar and this is State of the Nation. Good conscience fears no evil, reports. I was unperturbed all along because I knew Nigerians freely gave us the mandate. We're now vindicated, words of President Muhammadu Buhari shortly after the Presidential Petition Tribunal made its judgment on Wednesday. Does this then mean all is done and dusted? Perhaps not for the PDP, who heads to the Supreme Court. Shortly after the tribunal judgment, President Muhammadu Buhari, in a tweet, said, I dedicate this victory to the Almighty God and to all Nigerians, and I commend the judiciary for dispensing justice without fear or favor. With this ruling, it is now time for the country to move forward as one cohesive body, putting behind us all bickerings and potential destructions over an election in which Nigerians spoke clearly and resoundingly as well. I am hereby extending a hand of fellowship to everyone who felt aggrieved at the outcome of the election and went to court. It was well within your democratic rights to go to court. Now that the court has spoken, let us join hands to move Nigeria to the next level. End of quote. That anonymous judgment on Wednesday dismissed the petition filed by the PDP and its candidate Alhaji Atiku Abubakar challenging the victory of President Muhammadu Buhari in the February 23rd presidential election. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of this now. Joining me from our Abuja studios is a former lawmaker, Cletus Obo, also a member of the APC. I want to thank you so much indeed. At some point, we'll also have Aki Oshuntoku of the PDP. He is indeed a stalwart to also join in this conversation. But let's begin with you in our Abuja studios. Looking at the president's tweet, he said, I commend the judiciary for dispensing justice without fear or favor. What do you say to those who choose to view this from the removal of the former CJN, Walter Onogen, from the judiciary question in the country just before all of this judgment by the tribunal came through?
I didn't take that. I wish you come again.
Yes, I was just asking you that you did watch that judgment live on Channels Television. And what would you then say to people who looked at Mr. President's tweet, which he said that he commends the judiciary for dispensing justice without fear or favor? What do you make of that against people who would think that why all of this now, having removed the former CJN, Walter Onogen, just before the tribunal finally came out with its resolutions and its judgment?
Well, let me say this. That judgment, by all standards, I have followed election judgments from the two-third controversy of the 1979 election as a secondary school boy who was already into debating, up to the 4/3 in the 2007-2011 elections of this same Buhari against Obasanjo, Buhari against Jonathan, and Musa Yar'Adua. Those elections and this judgment especially will not need any comment. Whether the president made a comment or not, we should look at the value of what has been presented before Nigerians. And I do think that judgment and this judgment, we are going to the Supreme Court as the PDP has threatened or has said it will do, which is their right to do so. But I want to tell you that they are going there maybe to expand on our jurisprudence. And that is all that they can get from that place, an academic exercise in which there will be an affirmation of the very cerebral, very, very resounding, and very well-researched judgment that Justice Garba and his team, that five-man panel, brought to bear on the Nigerian legal system, electoral system and processes, and everything that it entails to take an election to be serious, free, and fair, and what it means. When they talk about technicalities most of the time, when they talk about the president's comment and other things, it doesn't vitiate, it doesn't in any way distract from what the substance and gravamen of the contents of that judgment and its dilution, the way it was diluted, the way it was dissected, the way it was decimated, the way it was a surgery, a sword analysis of the law, such that even a first-year law student, even a non-lawyer, will definitely be impressed about that judgment. And I want to see what the Supreme Court will do about it. And I don't think somebody is laying a foundation to cry foul about the judiciary. And as I have made the comment elsewhere, I want to say, just that very day on Wednesday, while people were jubilating in Abuja, in Calabar, people were also crying and weeping over the same judges. Just as people wept in Zamfara State and as they did in Rivers State and as they did in other places that APC lost and lost so badly even before the election.
Okay,
so
if I may button.
Why the same judiciary that is good today becomes very bad the next day. I think this is very unfair on our judiciary, and it doesn't repose confidence and sportsmanship on the part of political desperados.
Well, it's not all uhuru for the APC, if you will, because the PDP says it's going to the Supreme Court to contest the judgment of the tribunal. And you say that you'd like to see what it will come out with. I'm also quite interested in that because one of the areas where the PDP says it will also look into with a view to contesting this is that President Muhammad Buhari, according to the ruling, said that the ruling said rather that Buhari is eminently qualified to contest the 2019 elections, having met the minimum basic requirements for running for the highest office in the land. Now, the PDP is still contesting that particular objection that it rose in this landmark judgment, if you will. But a lot of people still have got misgivings about that certificate that was always been the front burner on discussions. How well will he escape that at the Supreme Court?
Let me say this about the issue of certificate. It is not the first time certificate matters are being brought before the courts in Nigeria. The Supreme Court of Nigeria over names, the issue of name, what is in a name and who owns a name, over the issue of qualification and non-qualification and disqualification of candidates and candidature before, during, and after elections, pre-election, post-election, and the tribunals. The rulings are a plethora from the times of the Latinitic poetic judge, Justice Oputa, and onto the cerebral Nikki Toby. Several landmark judgments on the issue of certificate and qualification. And Section 318 several, sections 131, several have shown what the equivalent of a certificate is. Indeed, this issue has, each time there's a shift of ground, and each time they shift the ground, they open the space again for suspicion about whether they really wanted to get an election result from the courts, which is that they are not questioning the qualification of President Muhammadu Buhari, having served the Nigerian Army, which is an institution from the position of a cadet, which was even defined by dictionary meaning by the judgment that was given on Wednesday, the 11th of this month. Let me say that those qualifications presuppose that even with a primary 6 certificate, after working for 10 years, you are qualified. But that even if that fails, assuming without conceding, that this president did not even go to primary school, if he can appear before INEC and show that he can read and write and comprehend in English language, that once INEC is satisfied with it, it did not. They now shifted ground to the point that they are saying he swore on oath that he has a certificate he did not present. The very element of that, the element and the issue raised there is about perjury. Perjury is a criminal offense by our penal code, and therefore it can only be proven by preponderance of evidence beyond reasonable doubt. What was the preponderance of evidence put before the court? The court said documents were dumped. Even when they considered the documents, such as the document from the Army headquarters and Army spokesman, the document was even read in open court to its very last detail. And what it did was to rather open up the fact that Buhari was not just qualified, but was eminently qualified. And in holding so, the court has done substantial justice to what has been. But having said that, I do know that it is not a happy day for anybody who loses. And for perennial and habitual complainants, such as the PDP has become now the house of sorrow, I will tell them to take heart. It is not in our tradition in Africa not to allow our brothers weep for a long time. We will console them, we will bring them in, and the president had offered the olive branch. Let them follow that up and come in here and then develop this country. 4 years is not 40 years. The 4 years we have already started consuming it. After
if I may just butt in also, because as you are saying that the president has extended an olive branch to the PDP to try to come together and fix the country, let's get the views of Akin Osuntoku. Unfortunately, I understand that we have a traffic situation on the road, on the Berger axis of the Kara Bridge, that cannot allow you to be here in the studios with me. But let's talk to you via telephone. Many believe that the tribunal, in dismissing the claims that President Muhammadu Buhari induced voters through the trader money scheme, should have been thoroughly examined. That's the stance of your party, the PDP. Do you think that now that the trader money initiative is still ongoing, would you stand on that fulcrum as a point to, disqualification fingers on this elections of the 2019 presidential mandate, which the president says was duly given to him by the people of this country?
Well, the democracy or the electoral system of this country has been debased beyond recognition. Look at the judgment that was given. Was like walking to the answer. It was like having an answer that we are working towards. That was what it all amounted to. The ritual or the rigmarole of stampeding the Chief Justice out of the former Chief Justice out of office had already indicated that, look, they had anticipated bringing about a roadblock, at the tribunal or the court ruling stage. So let nobody fool the other person. The moment the president declared that he was seeking re-election, the fact of that election was changed. So either way, I don't think nobody should play the hypocrite here. They don't look. You look at all the judgments, the same argument that the person who read the judgment used could have been used by the same people, to reach a different verdict, which is to say that Muhammadu is not different from Muhammad. Now, if the shoes are on the other side of the feet, you can be sure that that same logic will be turned on its head to disqualify if that was what they intended to do. So let's forget the trader money, of course, is the shame of this government, the blatant way that the system is being, corrupted and perverted. And we see this a country, is a government that says that, anti-corruption is its main agenda. And then you go out conspicuously to perpetrate what you say that you are fighting.
I'll come back to you. We have to go on a very quick break. I'll come back to you, and then you can still land on your submissions and then still ask some more questions that pertains to that trader money, which seems to be a very interesting part that people want to understand what is going on. Is it an extension? Is it a poverty alleviation program? Or what exactly is it? We'll return after these messages. Join us again. Welcome back to State of the Nation. Mr. Aki Oshutoku, even though we understand you're still in traffic and trying to reach us, talk to us using via telephone, do you believe that the trader money is used to buy votes?
Yes, of course. You know that, of course, it was recently reintroduced in those states that their elections are taking place now and are not part of the general election. Bayelsa State and I think Kogi State. The first president has gone there to start distributing the money again. And this is the money that is going to recover from so-called Abacha. But of course, you know that the president earlier said that Abacha stole no money. So you can see the kind of, the habits, the attitude of the government, towards, it's an open inducement and corruption, and they are taking advantage of the impoverization of the poverty of the people, of course, which they largely has aggravated. So that is a double jeopardy.
But then what would you say to your statement, now that we know that just yesterday, Thursday, the vice president was in Kebbi State for the same exercise?
So what do you mean? Who is kidding who? When there was an outcry that, look, why are you? In any case, what were they waiting for? What was the lapse? Look, they've gone back. The election concluded in February. What stopped them from continuing with it? So why must you wait till the season of another set of elections for you to start winning? And it's clear. The message is clear. They're just trying to pull wool over anybody.
Okay.
Anybody talk about trader money in February when the election was collected, was conducted.
My apologies. Let me get the views of Mr. Obun, who is in our Abuja studios. And those allegations by Mr. Oshutoku will seem to suggest to anyone who is listening to him that perhaps the judicial arm in that ruling did not toe the right path, as he is alluding to. But this is a project that the government says will take out 100 million people out of poverty in the next 10 years. How best do you think that the strategy in going about that should be carried out?
Well, I have spoken about habitual complainants. When criticism descends into the arena, it becomes cynicism. And cynicism is a very excruciating ailment that is psychologically very tormenting. I want to put this question to Mr. Oshutoku. I ask you, if they were constructing East-West Road now, and there's election in Bayelsa, the last president from southern Nigeria was from Bayelsa State, and that project was under his regime, will you say that the continuation of the construction of that road is to induce the voters in Bayelsa State? If between January and today, no trader money was distributed, because one, after the elections, there was the tribunals in which all the candidates were on trial. There was no composition of the Federal Executive Council. There were the issues of insecurity and insecurity. And now the composition of the cabinet has been done. Do you expect that nothing should be done because there's an election? Are we just running this country on the basis of election for election's sake or for development for our people? And trader money is just one little aspect of the composition of what APC had promised as part of its manifesto. That is a social intervention program. The school feeding program. Have you stopped your children in those states where they are feeding children? Will you also say they should stop feeding the children so that the parents will not vote in election? Are they voting election in Zamfara or in Kebbi or in Cross River State, where I come from? Those children they are feeding, they should stop feeding them so that when the election finish from Bayelsa and Kogi, we
Mr.
cannot proceed with feeding the school children.
If I may just redirect that to you, he said that, according to his words, he said that who is fooling who? So the question then now follows that when he says who is fooling who, that also applies to the school feeding program and every other programs that the government has started under its SIP programs.
Precisely what I am asking you. It is a manifesto. It's an election promise that APC has. Go and look at the APC manifesto. If you are not familiar with it, please take a copy. I'm a member of this party. I partook in the formulation of that constitution. And I'm telling you that one of the things in our manifesto is this intervention program and what we call the sentencing of poverty into history, to make poverty history in our country. And this government has come out to tell you that in the next 10 years, we are going to take 100 million people out of 180, 170 million people. And if that is China is doing that all over the world. There are such benchmarks and what we call the Millennium Development Goals and all such other expansive policies of government in collaboration with international agencies like the World Bank, United Nations Development Program and all that. And if these social intervention programs in our country are intended to ameliorate, for instance, Jonathan's government even went into what they call the nomadic education. Nomadic education was a strong policy of Jonathan government. It gave him so much votes in 2011. Nobody cried about that. Nobody talked about it as fooling somebody. So I do not think that in the implementation of electoral promises, political inclinations and imputations must be made to every action of government on the basis of election, just election's sake.
Okay, let's get back to Mr. Osuntokun and look at some other issues that the PDP raised. The use or non-use of the card reader to transmit results rests with the guidelines strictly set by the Independent National Electoral Commission, that's INEC. Did INEC shift the post when before the elections it was widely perceived that election results will be transmitted electronically, and after the announcement of the results, it was said that the results were not transmitted electronically? The court has made its pronouncement on that specific objection that's raised by the PDP and the candidate Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. Do you have any misgivings on that judgment from the court?
But you have already stated the case. If INEC says it's going to do something, it's going to transmit electronically, and then halfway through, look, how do you even change the rules of the game midway into it? What was the excuse for not doing so? Now, the only excuse that you can, the only logical inference to make from it is that, look, if you do it, if they accept that it is done electronically, you can ascertain the validity of the votes far more than manually. Manual transmission and all this thing is vulnerable to all sorts of manipulation, and that's which took place. So the reason why anyone will not want to do what he has said they are going to do, which is the transmission of the vote electronically, it's just contrary to what they said. It keeps on, we have started hearing snippets of it, especially when the observer, one of the observer groups were talking and said, look, they were aware that at least 60% of the votes were transmitted electronically, rather, and then the elect came up with this funny idea that they were doing pilot program and all these kind of things. So if that had happened in any country other than Nigeria, you would bring a laughing stock of, you wanted to introduce something, you said you were going to use it. I'm on the program. Excuse me,
my apologies. Mr. Osuntokun seems to have a little challenge at the moment where he is, but we do sincerely thank you for talking to us on this very landmark judgment from the tribunal, Presidential Tribunal, that has given out the judgment on Wednesday. And also to you, Mr. Cletus Obun, in our Abuja studios, a member of the APC as well. I'm afraid that this is where we're going to have to close the curtains, but I must sincerely thank you as well for being part of the show, and to everyone who's been watching. Many thanks indeed for watching. I'm Gimba Umar, and this is State of the Nation. Bye for now.